I think our start time was 12:35. We're just happy, glad, and excited that you all have joined us today to talk about youth voice advocates, and bringing young people to the table. Here in Santa Clara County, I'm a probation officer assigned as the coordinator for the Youth Advisory Council. We take it very seriously that we have this council to bring youth voice to the table in a very real and relevant way. With that being said, we're going to share some slides with you. We're going to talk about what we're doing here in Santa Clara County, why the work is so important. We're also going to talk about how it's being effective and the change that it's causing and bringing. And additionally, we're going to bring in some young people to kind of share some of their story, to share their experiences, the positives that they've experienced, the negatives that they've experienced as well. With that being said, because we have young people here, some are very nervous. For a few, it's their first time ever presenting. We ask that you just be very respectful, be patient. They're dealing with nerves and anxiety and everything else. And some of our young people are comfortable sharing kind of their full story. Other young people are not comfortable sharing everything. Some have just come to me and said they don't want to be on camera when they share, but they do want to share. So I said, you just be patient with the young people as they share. They're being very open and honest. You can feel free to use the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat as well. If you have any questions for our young people, they'll be happy to go ahead and field those questions. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and launch into our presentation. Again, welcome to the Youth Advisory Council for the Santa Clara County, a collaboration with the Fresh Lifelines for You. Today, our objectives are to introduce what the YAC, or the Youth Advisory Council, is, to recognize the Youth Advisory Council and its role within the probation department, and the partnership, of course, we share with our community partner, Fresh Lifelines for Youth, to create a meaningful space for our young people to connect with you here. Because the biggest change happens when we can create meaningful connections between young people who have been system involved, or anyone who's been system involved, and us who are doing the work and delivering the services to them. Going to identify ways for attendees to partners with youth and other people with lived experiences, to bring both positive outcomes for both the youth and the community. Recognize and provide attendees with a client perspective on the probation experience. What is the YAC, and who are we? The Youth Advisory Council, if you were in the main session where I think the actual first presentation, a lady named Kathy, she used to be a deputy probation officer here in Santa Clara County. She saw the need for youth voice in conjunction with the probation department. So she actually put us in the mindset to work on this. And she did this. This was one of the last things she did for our department before she retired, is she pushed the department to value youth voice. And when you start talking about value, we know in our counties, value is really shown in a couple of different areas: time, treasure, and talent. So where you invest those things is vital. It shows what's important. So of course, giving time to this initiative, which is professional development, employment assistance, all the things that young people need as they transition from childhood to adulthood, but also treasure, right? You have to put money in if you really value it. And that's what Kathy Martinez and others in the county, they worked to put it in a budget, to make it important and imperative, not only a budget to pay staff, but to pay young people for their voice. Not only to pay them just when their voice is there, but to pay them for preparation, to pay them in food, because any table you create with young people is always made better if you have food at the center of that, because then it makes the environment conducive to conversation. One of the things that's very important for everyone to understand is that some people who have been through a system and they've been traumatized potentially by that system, to try to say we're going to bring them back to the same place they were traumatized is a scary thing for young people. So oftentimes, one of the successful things that you probably want to do when you want to bring youth voice in is acknowledge the space that you're bringing them, those young people into. Meaning, if they were at juvenile hall and traumatized at juvenile hall, do you want to have the youth advisory council meetings in a room at juvenile hall? Maybe not, because they're then having to deal with some of the same things that they dealt with when they were incarcerated, for example, some of the same places they were traumatized with programs. So that's why it's important to have a community partner or a place that you can meet that separates them from the place that they had trauma. The Youth Advisory Council is a way for young people to deal with their trauma. And as they grow, they actually get comfortable going back to those spaces, juvenile hall, the probation department, family and children's services. They get used to going back to those places and learn that they're not going there as a client anymore, but they're going there now as almost a co-equal. They're coming into those spaces as an employee, as a co-worker, to bring their experiences. But it's important that as you build those young people up with professional development and other things, it's important that you create a safe space outside of the place that they were traumatized. And so the Youth Advisory Council is made up of young people. And what's important for us to understand with the Youth Advisory Council here in Santa Clara County, we allow the young people to set the narrative. We allow them to set the agenda. We allow them to set the spaces that they're going to go into, that they feel comfortable in, the spaces and how they're going to share and where they're going to share. For example, there was a time that we were a part of one of the mayor's task force in the city of San Jose. Well, at that time, the young people felt like their voices were being tokenized. They weren't really being listened to. They weren't really being heard. And the young people made a decision as they voted within themselves, within the Youth Advisory Council, that they would no longer be a part of that group. Giving the young people autonomy, giving them the ability to choose where they're going to share, how they're going to share is vitally important because it allows them to set the things that are important to them. If you try to create a Youth Advisory Council that's just tokenized where you're going to try to create mini county robots that they're going to just go and espouse something that you've taught them or something you told them, you're not going to ever get to that passion that young people have. They're passionate when it's something that affects them, their community, their little sister, their little brother, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to give them that voice, that honest voice to tell the truth. One of the primary aspects of the Youth Advisory Council for the Probation Department is we don't have young people who are actively are on probation be a part of the Youth Advisory Council. The reason that is because we want young people to have freedom of voice without the fear of consequence. Does that make sense? We want them to be able to speak their truth, say what really happened without the fear. So if they've had a bad experience with a probation officer and they want to tell that experience, they're free to tell it without the fear that a probation officer will retaliate. So that's kind of why we set that up. Some of the things that the Youth Advisory Council does besides sit on councils, one of the most important things that we do, we have something called rep orientation, redemption, empowerment. And the purpose of this rep orientation is to bring young people who are for the first time being placed on probation, bring that young person and their families into a safe space so that they can hear from young people how to be successful on probation. And our young people who have been successful then can come in and talk to them. Now, understand the power of something like this to affect later groups. It's so powerful in that oftentimes you have adults, you have a judge, you have parents, you have probation officer, you have institutional counselors, you have all these different adults telling young people what they need to do. Well, for the first time, you have young people who look like the young people who come from the same neighborhoods, some of the same situations that can relate to young people, telling them how they can be successful, telling them why they shouldn't get in a car with someone they know, for example, who has a gun. Why is that important? And how do they do that? How do they say no in those circumstances? Because we all know just say no doesn't work. You got to have a plan, and the young people can sit and give from their perspective a plan. Not only do we give this orientation to youth who are newly on probation, but we give it to their families. And even most recently, we've seen how parents are empowered by hearing this discussion. So in short, that is who the Youth Advisory Council is. It's made up of 10 to 12 young people. We do it annually. Bring the young people in. We work to give them educational opportunities, give them opportunities to grow professionally, because we don't want young people to come and be a part of a council for, let's say, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, and then they leave exactly the way that they came. So a part of us giving back to young people who are giving us their voice is to sow back into them, to give back to them in professional development, to help open doors that may seem impossible for them to have walked through before. I'm gonna give you a quick, this is a part of our mission statement, to educate and enlighten the probation department, to advise the juvenile justice system on how to implement new strategies. And it's so serious in Santa Clara County, and we are thankful for it because the probation department will come up with policy, and before they get ready to enact it, they will come do focus groups, have discussions, and invite the young people to be a part of the planning and implementation. Now, what is so important is you have to bring young people in. Don't bring them in at the final hour. Don't bring them in to just try to put a rubber stamp on something you already have planned to do. Bring them in the early parts of the planning process so they can help you flesh out what's important. For some adults, we want to push school, education, go to college. But some young people could be at the table and let you know, some of us aren't going to college. So how can you then connect them to a trade school or another opportunity so that they can grow employment-wise? Well, a lot of times these young people on these youth advisory councils can tell you how best to do that process. Support youth in making better decisions that will affect their freedom, future, and success. It's important to bring them in and allow the young people to be a part of the community. We're not separating them or pulling them from the community. We want them to be a part of the community. Here's our vision statement. We envision the inclusion of youth voice will promote a local juvenile justice system that fosters the success and personal growth of our youth. As a result, we will see an increase in the number of youth who successfully complete probation, as well as a decreased youth incarceration rate. And right now, Santa Clara County has one of the lowest incarceration rates ever in our county. Here we have some of the core values. And again, remember, these core values that I'm showing here are actually driven and created by our young people. And the council updates these, changes these as they see fit. The goal of the Youth Advisory Council, of course, as I've said many times, is to elevate the voice of young people, youth, equipping young people to lead the way in creating more effective and humane juvenile justice systems. With that said, I've said it many times, it's important that you as a worker, you as a county employee, a county leader, a director, a deputy director, it's important for you to understand that community collaboration is vital to the success. The probation department actually has a somewhat codependent relationship on our community partner. So with that said, I'm gonna bring in Stephanie Shinsato. She is the Youth Advisory Council manager, and she works specifically with the program called Fresh Lifelines for Youth. That's who we partner with to run this program. Stephanie.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. For those of you who weren't in the main session earlier today, my name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I've worked at FLY for the last 4 years. So here at FLY, our mission is to partner with young people to unlock their potential and just advance justice in California all over. So we provide lightweight case management services, but professional development trainings is definitely one of our goals with these young people. council members work collaboratively with probation and other system partners to inform and enhance current justice systems and their policies and procedures. Our council members also have opportunities to participate in monthly meetings and commissions and things like that. We also host a monthly orientation for new families and young people who have recently been introduced to the juvenile justice system. And we do have a few members here today that do, like James said earlier, do want to share their stories. But we would definitely just appreciate your patience and giving us grace with some of these young people who have yet to do that. This is their first time. So with that, I don't know, James, if you want to go to the next slide or if we want to jump right in. You want to play the so we do have this video that we weren't able to play in the beginning, so we're going to play it now. It is about a 9-minute video just to kind of give an overall overview of what we do here.
Yeah, and it kind of shows the effect of giving youth a voice.
I'm going to come help, James. I think we need to share the sound of your screen.
You can't hear it?
No. I'm going to go help. So stop sharing your screen, and then when you reshare it. And then when you reshare.
All right, one more time.
Rep. Redemption, Education, and Purpose. The name of this orientation was created by 3 of our founding members who were tried in the adult court system. They chose this name because they wanted to send a message to youth that your past mistakes do not dictate who you can become.
I'm 18 years old, and right now I'm currently housed in Santa Clara Juvenile Hall. I'm also participating in the Youth Advisory Council, hoping to help youth like me, or the old me. I grew up on the east side of San Jose with both of my parents. They worked late hours, so they weren't really around much. I remember watching other parents walk their kids to school. I felt alone. Once I started middle school, things continued to get worse. I was getting suspended and getting into fights. I didn't manage to graduate the 8th grade. That was a huge disappointment in my parents' eyes. After that, I just stopped trying altogether. I didn't care if I did good or not. I started robbing and stealing to support the habit I was living.
Is
I
this
ended up caught and placed in juvenile hall. At first, I thought I was going to get another couple of months, but I ended up getting direct filed. It took me a while to process the fact that I was getting charged as an adult. I started to reflect back on my past and the things that should have changed.
Throughout my early childhood, my family and I moved back and forth from the United States to Mexico because of financial issues and my father's legal problems. I was easily influenced by my neighborhood. By the age of 14, I caught my first case, which placed me in juvenile hall's maximum security unit. By the age of 17, I had visited juvenile hall about 6 times for various felonies and misdemeanors. By this time, I was already used to the whole process of being incarcerated. so I became very careless with my life. Throughout my year in juvenile hall, I've gained my high school diploma, expanded my mind by studying various subjects such as psychology, philosophy, and spirituality. I was then given the opportunity to participate in the Youth Advisory Council, which has helped me extend my reach to help others by telling my story.
Being placed on probation at a young age from 15 to 16, you're not thinking about second chances or not thinking, because I'm not thinking about the consequences. I'm not thinking about how it'll affect me, how it'll affect my family. And it actually took a while for me to understand that. I put them through a lot. And I just had this nonchalant attitude. Like, I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about myself during this time. My dad was my main support system. Just seeing all the things he went through, it hurts. I stayed on probation longer than I needed to. It took for me to want more for me to break that. Looking back, me being on probation longer, it helped because it actually changed something in me. It made me not want to get in trouble with the law anymore.
So in my experience, when I first got on probation, I did not think that this was all reflected on me. As much as the blame was on me, I wanted to blame it on someone else. And the one person I could do that to was my mom, because she was there so much for me that I resented her.
Supporting my son was an area I had never imagined that I would be in. That experience was, it was harsh because you don't know what to expect, and you have your son's life in someone else's hands. Literally, someone's telling you, where he's going to go and what he's going to do, and you have no say in it. And we're here to love and protect him. That's the natural first minute, response you have, and you can't do that. You can't help them out of this situation. Not only do you feel hopeless, but you also feel that you've done something horribly wrong to cause this to happen. I think every parent goes through that feeling of failure. Just in life in general, we carry a lot. And me, as being a single parent, I felt like I was responsible for both parties, of course. So my advice to other parents is you can't participate enough. You participate, you show up, and you just, at times, just sit down and hear them out. Let them speak. And without an opinion, just put all that aside and just be there. I think that's my best advice, to say just being there and being loving and supportive is our role. Love and support, that's our role.
Education. Education is important because it gives us an understanding of the things around us. Historically, tribes use stories to explain why things are the way they are. For me, it was the value of these stories that taught me how to have integrity and that I am an example of the people before me. So I decided I just had to be better, so I can pass on the knowledge I have gained to the generation after me.
With this knowledge that I gained, another minor and I created a psychology class in order to help others expand their minds as well. I've also helped incarcerated youth by advising them to participate in certain programs that will allow them to have a grasp of their future goals.
After a while being incarcerated, I just got with the program and started handling my business. Decided to get my high school diploma, go to different classes, take college classes, any courses that I could take. I started teaching myself too. If I would have tried as much as I'm trying now, if when I was out, I could have accomplished more.
Purpose. To me, purpose means telling our stories. I believe our purpose to be there for the people who follow after us, supporting them through the struggles they have to face so they can find their purpose. If I could give advice to a youth on probation, I would say, don't be afraid of the trials ahead. Whatever the verdict is, it does not define who you are. We all have a purpose. It's most important to have our purpose realized.
I wouldn't have imagined myself here at the age of 16. I'm 24 years old now. 8 years later, I have a great job. I have a great career. I'm a part of the council where I'm able to travel, where I'm able and I get to travel and share my testimony and meet people who are just as passionate as me in giving back. I have a beautiful son. I'm in a much healthier place mentally. And that's all because I didn't allow my mistakes to define me.
Sometimes I look back at my life and wonder how different things would have been if I would have never smoked that first blunt, or would have never allowed a split-second decision to cost me more than I would have ever gained from it. It took me a while of being incarcerated in order for me to accept my situation. Nevertheless, I didn't allow my predicament to bring me down. This is my past, and I appreciate all the experiences that have made me into a better and stronger man. This is just part of what my life has become, but I still see myself for the future. I still see myself with my own family, my own home, and my own business. But I'm not telling my story to prove to anyone that I'm a good man. I'm telling my story to prove to others that no matter what the circumstances are, to never give up. And to all the youth out there who have been given a second chance or is barely rolling down their path of destruction, I hope my life experiences encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity in a positive manner. And if your family looks down upon you as a disappointment, or your probation officer doesn't believe in you, prove them wrong and redeem yourself. But don't do it for your probation officer or your family or anyone else. Do it for yourself.
All right, that was the end of our video. Thank you guys all for listening to that. I hope you enjoyed it. So now moving on, we are going to get into our young people's stories and experiences. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Our first young person who would like to share, her name is Stephanie, and she is gonna come on over. I think it's
How can I see myself? Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Herrera. I'm part of YAC. I've been part of YAC since 2019. Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure. Okay, great. I've been part of YAC since 2019. I actually had a full circle moment because I attended one of the orientations that they hold for youth who are placed on probation. And then I ended up connecting back with the managers after I completed probation and ended up joining YAC. So I'll be touching a little bit more on our work with JCAN. So I was connected with the Juvenile Court Aligned Network, also known as JCAN, in about 2021. And just last year, me and JCAN and another one of my colleagues worked on a proclamation for the Board of Supervisors to proclaim January as Disrupting the School to Prison Pipeline Month. And me and my colleague presented the proclamation, which was ultimately accepted by the Board of Supervisors. And the month was proclaimed as Disrupting the School to Prison Pipeline. And we worked on this because we believe this was an important topic to bring awareness, and also it connected to another project that we were working on, which was the Student Bill of Rights. This Bill of Rights was meant for youth who have been incarcerated or have been part of the juvenile justice system before. And one of the rights would have been dual enrollment, which is basically when a youth is not attending school for a period amount of time, then they are unenrolled. So to be back enrolled into school is a very long process. And usually, kids need their parents there and all of that. So with the dual enrollment, youth don't get unenrolled from school and can easily transition back into school after being incarcerated. A lot of what we do is give our input and share our stories to the community, but we do a lot more than that. We also are working and currently are working on holding community organizations accountable and for them to do what they said they would do. So right now we're in the works to continue with the Bill of Rights, Student Bill of Rights, and there's been some miscommunication, but we're hoping to get back on that this year. And what can I say? And I think that's it. Yeah. Share a little bit of this. Okay, I'll be touching a little bit back about my story. So I was placed on probation my senior year of high school. And I think that when I thought about probation, it brought a lot of shame to, when I thought about probation, I thought about shame and I thought about crime and stuff like that. But now when I think about probation, I think about a second chance, meeting a lot of youth who have been in the juvenile justice system and also a lot of adults that work in the system. It's really gave me a different perspective, and I'm very grateful for that. And also, empowering youth to use their voice. And YC has really taught me that we all have a story and that we can all make a change, big or small. So I've really found a big passion through me kind of being placed on probation and then finding this nonprofit and then doing the work that I do up to this day. But I will be passing it off to my colleague. Thank you all for your time, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my presentation.
Thank you, Stephanie. And what she was saying is when a young person is incarcerated, they get enrolled into the juvenile hall school and disenrolled from their local school. Now, if that young person is only incarcerated for 1 week and then released home, then he's not enrolled directly back in school, he or she. And then what we know is if it takes them 4 weeks to get enrolled in school, that's all day, every day for more complications, more issues, lack of credits, etc. So when Stephanie and her colleagues worked on the Student Bill of Rights to say, not only will a young person be dual enrolled, so they're in juvenile hall, in the juvenile hall school, they're also remaining enrolled in their local school. And when they get out of custody, the next day, they're able to go back and get right back in school, reconnect with the education program. I think that was such a major accomplishment for the young people. I'm so proud of them that they saw and identified this as an issue and worked on it. The county acknowledged it. And Stephanie and another colleague actually presented this to the Board of Supervisors, and they accepted it, and it's a mandate here in this county. I think it was just a fantastic accomplishment. With that being said, her colleague is going to come and introduce himself. Come on, sir. Share my space. No?
Hi, my name is Brandon Lariego. I've been on Yak for about 2 months now. I'm really looking forward to tell you guys my life story about being on probation, about me getting off, and about the positive things and what I learned off probation, of being on probation. And I was born October 2006. Growing up, I had a decent childhood, a lot of ups and downs growing up. My parents weren't really there for me, how they were supposed to be. My dad was always running around doing whatever he does. And my biological mom was never in my life. I had a struggle with getting clothes, getting clothes for school since back then we used to wear uniforms. The refrigerator at home was never full. As I got older, I started experiencing a lot of negativity in life. At 6 years old, I lost my grandma. It was really hard for me because she was the only person I used to talk to when I was going through some things when I was young. After her passing, I realized my personality and how I act and talk to my dad started to change. I started being disrespectful and started not listening. Me being so young, I stopped going to school, which was elementary school. Started hanging out with the kids that my dad didn't want me around, and started going home late. This was all at 6 years old. After I lost my grandma, and then after I lost my grandma, then a year later, my dad moved to San Jose and left me in LA to stay with my auntie and my cousins. Then when I turned 8 years old, I started messing up in school. More to the point, my auntie didn't want me at the house and wanted me to go to foster care. Once my auntie told me that I called my father, explaining to him the situation, and later on that month he came and got me from Los Angeles. 7.5 years old, moving to San Jose was going to be difficult for me because all my friends and I were close. All my friends I were close with were in Los Angeles. Once I moved to San Jose completely, I started getting way worse, started getting into altercations at school, started stealing, started not coming home. The cycle kept on repeating until I hit my teenage years. Then I went to juvenile hall at 13. Once I turned 16, I got sentenced to the ranch. I stayed at the ranch for 9 months. I was really originally supposed to get released in 6 months, but I got into a couple altercations, which pushed my release date back. Once I got released, I got put into aftercare. Aftercare is a program for you for youth when they get out of James Ranch. That program makes sure you do good and are doing things you're supposed to, like going to school, staying in school, going to all the programs you're supposed to be doing, and etc. Once I got released my first week out, I ended up going back to juvenile hall because I got an altercation at school, which made me violate probation and come back. I went back to the ranch for another 2 weeks. Once I got released, they restarted my aftercare, which is 13 weeks again. I got out, but 4 weeks in, I got into another altercation on the street, which made me go back to juvenile hall. I stayed in for a week, but my probation officer gave me one more chance to do better. Once I got released aftercare, uh, obviously was restarted. I thought to myself that I needed better and start getting back on my feet. 3 months later, I ended up getting off aftercare. And then 6 months later, I ended up getting off probation. How I got off probation was being consistent with my providers, staying clean and going home on time and not being out late. Now that I'm off probation and working, I have goals I'd want to reach. It's never too late to make a change. As long as you want the best for yourself. Also, I got a son now. It's time for me to grow up and be a better father and a role model for my son and make sure I'm gonna be there for him in the future. But me having my son really has opened up my eyes and made me look at things I used to do different. I started noticing once I had him, good karma started to come in play, which is me graduating, getting off probation, and finally getting back on my feet.
Yeah, very good. Very good. What was your experiences though dealing with professional providers like probation and
It was hard at first, but like as I got older, it was I found out like I started to know it was only for the better to get myself right. And then yeah,
so we're talking to a lot of providers right now,
Yeah.
people who come and deliver direct service to someone like yourself, right?
yeah.
Think of all the things that you've been through, different cities, different families. Sounds like a poor connection at home. How can one of these adults come into your life if they have another Brennan somewhere? What's the best thing that they can do when they're coming into your life to help you change or connect with you, given everything? What would have helped 8-year-old Brennan before you got in trouble?
Really just guidance. I didn't have the right guidance. Really. Uh Me personally, it was hard 'cause I was a hard-headed kid. I was hard-headed. So I had to learn things the hard way every time. But I can't speak for everybody else.
Mhm.
I say just guidance and guiding the youth or like the young people to a better way and how to really live life and how life's supposed to be. There for you, I guess.
More
Like,
guidance.
Yeah,
Okay.
more guidance.
That works. Very good. Anything else you want to share with us? All right, Brennan. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, you guys. You guys have a good one.
He was nervous. Now he's comfortable. All right, we got one more. Josiah, are you gonna be on camera?
Yeah.
All right, come on.
Good.
Yeah, you do.
All right, hi. Good afternoon, guys. My name is Josiah, and this is basically just going to be a quick summary of like the experience I've had while growing up. On October 20th, 2006, I was born in Reno, Nevada. I was born in Reno, Nevada. As an infant, I was with my biological parents, which were hooked on heavy drugs and very abusive. This led to me being in and out of foster homes at a very young age, where I eventually ended up being adopted. But before I was adopted is a whole story which paved the rocky path which I went down while growing up, turning me to the person that I've turned into today. As a child, I was in and out of foster homes because my parents, as I said before, were on drugs and they were not able to take care of me. And they were always fighting as well, like arguing and stuff like that. Um, so they weren't like, meaning that they weren't able to take care of me and basically like feed me because they were too busy doing like other things and not working as well. Once I was adopted, oh yeah, after I was put into the foster care, I was only around for a little bit longer until I was eventually adopted. Once I was adopted, I moved to San Jose, California from Nevada and started my life here. Adolescent years for me were kind of difficult because I was not because I was not put into a home where the youth and like where my siblings that I have now were upset like accepting of me. But I feel like one of the things that would have really like helped me throughout that experience is having like a social worker, because the whole time as soon as I was adopted, I didn't have any like social worker or anybody checking in with me at all. So uh for the first very long 8 years of me being with my new siblings, they were not very fond of me, and that caused a lot of problems. I was also raised in something I guess people would call a bad neighborhood. Being that way, I ended up adapting to the environment and became really comfortable. One thing I feel could have been helpful for me as far as the adoption process and the whole social services thing would have been someone from social services to provide me with a support system to help me out growing up. By the age of 12, I had my first police encounter, and by the age of 14, I was taken back to juvenile hall taken to juvenile hall for the first time. After going back to juvenile hall 3 more times, I finally decided that I was done with jail and it was not worth my time. I realized I had bigger and better things to do and began to pursue being a barber. I plan on going to barber school very soon to obtain my barber license and start cutting hair. But throughout my whole probation experience, what I've gained from it is my high school diploma at 16 years old. I did like a program for construction. I did a program for welding, and I was also a part of YAC while I was incarcerated here in Santa Clara County. But it's really helped me out a lot and made me mature, because when I was younger, I was really like uh I guess you could say hot-headed, and I was really like just doing dumb stuff like that I shouldn't have been doing. So once I like got incarcerated, it made me like I don't know, it just made me really like open up my eyes and be like, wow, this is like really not cool. This is not something that people should want to do. And I just finally I got out, and then I just decided, yeah, this my time like doing this is it's done for. It's not like cool or anything. So after that, I just decided to start doing good and pursuing legal things that would benefit me in the long run.
Yeah. Great
That's it.
job.
Thanks, sir.
Great job. So you identified that, going through the adoption phase, you said that you were put into a home. And are you the youngest sibling when you put into that home?
Yeah.
So now whoever the baby was in that household is now, they're not the baby, you're the baby now.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of conflict between the new siblings
Yeah.
and this new baby coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have some people, some social workers and folks here that work with the foster care
Mm-hmm.
department. What would you say or suggest, or what is your opinion? What could have helped that family or you and that family deal with this process of like integrating you better?
Honestly, like probably like if the social services would have done like family groups together to kind of like
resolve the problems or even like kind of like get us like bonded together when I first got there, because my older siblings were not very like accepting of me because I was getting a lot of attention, because at that time when I was adopted, I was 4 years old. So I was still really young and I was getting a lot of attention. So at that time, my other siblings that were my adopted parents, like biological kids, they were like, oh, this isn't even her real son. Like this isn't even my real brother. Why are they treating him better than they treat me? I guess. So definitely having like some support groups to support not just me, but like me kind of like transitioning into the family, it would have been, I feel like it would have went like a lot smoother.
Yeah. So when you say support groups and bonding, can you give me an example? What is a support group, or what is family bonding?
Like
for you?
family therapy or something, like just to kind of like talk things out and tell each other like what, like, I don't know, you know how therapy is, but, and also just like maybe, I don't know, if they would have, honestly, it's gonna sound crazy, but like giving us like things to do as a family, like trips or something, because we didn't really have that growing up, and like I think that the reason why like I didn't get the support that I needed is because I made the move from Nevada to Santa Clara County, and that move, I guess that my like social services case, it never transferred from Nevada to California. It stayed over there the whole time, and I'm 17 years old now, and I was adopted when I was 4 years old. So because of that, like my social services case staying over there and not being transferred over here, I had no access to any social worker here in Santa Clara County.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah.
So even now, because there's certain benefits that young people who've been in the foster care system get, do you get those benefits now?
No, I'm not receiving any benefits.
Yeah. So I think you would also advise, like, we have to have a transition plan for the
Yeah.
prevention plan, because it
Yeah,
sounds like
for
the
sure.
foster care and the social services system could have done a better job to help maybe keep you out of the juvenile justice system.
Yeah, for sure. It would have.
Great. Anything else you want to share?
No, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, give him big ups, man. He didn't want to get on camera. He didn't want. You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
You did a
Appreciate it.
great job. So I'm gonna go over to Stephanie, and I want you all to really take serious, because the young people, they're nervous, but they're sharing like their personal experiences, and I thank them and honor them for what they're doing here today. But the fact that they're able to kind of decipher, because there's things that they're comfortable sharing with strangers and other things that they're not, and they're actually working through that as they share, and they're actually sharing some things that they hadn't planned to share. They're going ahead and sharing that. So I thank you for the opportunity that you all are presenting. We're going to go back to Stephanie. I think she has one of our young people. She's going to actually read the story.
Yes. Thank you, Josiah and Brandon and Stephanie. You guys are all doing really, really well. I do have one last story that one of our YAC members would like to remain anonymous, and we would like to respect that. So with that being said, this is just get our last story, and then we can go into questions and comments and things like that. So when I was around the age of 17 or 18, I had caught a case in which I was looking at some time. This was also during the time my mother was fighting her battle with cancer and money was a little tight. Couldn't afford a lawyer, so a public defender it was. By the time the case came to an anticlimactic ending, I had lost my mother to her terminal illness. I was jobless, going to school with the support of financial aid, and family barely scraping by. One of the terms of probation was to attend mandatory therapy and show proof. I had to go to the cheapest place for therapy, the Bill Wilson Center. The therapy there was subpar, and I didn't really work through any of my underlying mental issues or the loss of my mother. In my 12 months at the Bill Wilson Center, I had about 2 different therapists, which curbed my motivation to continue therapy and having to restart with a new person. I lost my motivation because of my lack of funds, and the Bill Wilson Center being a place where new psychology majors go to finish their hours or get hours. They're temporary. And for some who have abandonment issues, it reinforces that people, even those you are supposed to depend on, are temporary and will almost always leave. I feel like therapy that is mandated by court and probation should be paid for through the state or organizations associated with the state in an effort to help heal or properly address the issues of the youth. Today, the issues of youth today are dealing with and help them overcome it. It's hard for people to be able to afford life as it is. And in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, for most families, money is tight and everything around is expensive. Removing the barrier for having to pay for adequate mental health services would be a push in the right direction to not only support our youth, but to also disrupt the school to prison pipeline as well. It will also reduce the number of substance dependent people who have never properly dealt with trauma in life. And that's the conclusion of their story. So I think focusing in on this one particularly is, in the prevention perspective would be, helping these young people who are mandated to do these certain things, but don't have, whether it's not knowing how to fill out something for Medi-Cal to get the insurance to find a therapist or to find whatever they're court ordered or mandated to do. And it's definitely become an issue, and it's something we've heard over and over again here. So with that being said, we do want to leave this space open for questions, comments, or anything else that y'all have for us.
And actually, you don't have to use the chat if you don't want to. You can actually raise your hand and unmute, and we can have a discussion. Our young people are here.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about what was the last one? So I'm a little bit confused. So no youth on probation in California can be made to pay for anything. So is that meaning that in some counties, the county just doesn't have any resources for them? And so if they want therapy, so like, in other words, if we have a youth who needs therapy, mentoring, whether it's in their case plan, they want it, whatever it is, they don't pay for anything. We pay for everything. All the agencies get funding from the state to do that. So I'm not clear on what they're having to pay for.
Well, for some young people, you have to remember that a lot of those things are changes. It wasn't always the case. So
Okay. So not current.
It may not, that person who was sharing may not be on probation right now.
Okay.
But these are their experiences. And the real problem is, Aaron, that sometimes we do have access for young people, but we don't always do a good job of connecting that access. So that's what would be my takeaway from that.
That makes sense. In Santa Barbara, we're super fortunate. We have a team from our behavioral wellness mental health that works only with probation. So all of our youth on probation, we have a whole group of therapists that they can work with. And if one doesn't click and another one does, and then we obviously pay for the rest of the services as well. But yeah, that makes sense. So youth 5-6 years ago, maybe that wasn't an option and they couldn't.
And that's amazing, because I don't think in Santa Clara County, we have a behavioral health department, but I don't think that we have a section of that just devoted to Santa Clara County probation youth, and that they can pick different providers within that. That's actually some feedback.
Yeah, I know.
Great.
Doing case management work, I do know for some of the young people that I used to case manage, it's definitely not paid for. The behavioral health department has, they accept Medi-Cal, but some of these young people don't have the guidance to fill out those applications or make it to these appointments or things like that. So there's certain barriers that have been put up in terms of these things that have been mandated for them to have to do. So I think that's where this young person was coming from with that.
Well, James, I'm happy to swap notes on how we pay specifically for behavioral health clinicians just to work for probation. And then you can help me with the youth council. So perfect.
Sounds great. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, I have my hand up, but I don't know that you can see that.
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm sorry.
It's all right. No worries. No worries, Mr. James. No worries. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm 64-year-old woman, old crotchety woman, but I grew up in juvenile hall, a child of trauma, a child of broken family. And I think that the young man that was speaking that was 6 and then 8 and then prevention is I've been doing this for about 26 years since I got sober 26 years ago. But again, I never I'm just like the rest of these kids. You know, I ran away, the trauma was bad. I ran away, then you get on probation, then you run away again, then you get put in. They stuck me in, you know, a facility with girls that put guns in people's faces. I had no idea. You know what I mean? So prevention, if somebody could have taken the time to see that this is not normal behavior for a child my age, and maybe did something besides lock me up and offer the therapy services, you know, come in with a little bit of kindness, a little bit of support, a little bit of what's going on for you, because this is not normal behavior. It's not our fault as children. We do the best we can to survive. And unfortunately, those that lead us in that survival sometimes lead us the wrong way. You know, that's what parents are supposed to do that are absent. And unfortunately, because I didn't have any good parenting, I came to the table as a parent at 16 and I parented the same way. So with the raging drug addiction, because I couldn't manage life. You see, I'm lucky to be alive today. That's my blessing, and that's why I pay it forward, you know, and have for 26 years. But these are babies. I was a baby. I didn't ask to be sexually abused at the age of 5. I didn't ask to be disowned because I spoke about it and my family had position in the community. They didn't want that out in the community, that the family lawyer had been molesting me year after year, you see. So they disowned me and threw me to the other parent, you know, and they had no do nothing about me. But, and I wouldn't speak to the therapists that were like, made me feel like, well, you're broken and I'm going to fix you. I didn't know how to bond because I never had that to a parent. How am I going to bond to a stranger that wants to try to fix me? You know, nobody got beside me as a child. Nobody gets beside these children, you know, and that's the pain in the butt. You know what I'm saying? And the therapy should come when the trauma is recognized. We don't act out like that because that's what we do when we have a loving family. We act out like that because there's something broken and it's not our fault, you know, and that's where the gangs come from. That's a family that tells you do a good job. You're appreciated. You're valued there. That's what we need. We need the prevention to go on. You know what I'm saying? Ahead of time. Let's do that. Let's work on that when we see a child. Anyway, that's my piece. You know what? If I live to be 163, I don't know that it'll change in that time, but I'm glad to see that these young people have a voice, a platform, and they're willing to use it because that is power in this day and age, and we're going to make change. We have to.
Well, I would say,
grow up.
Penny, I would say that you know, obviously you have a passion for prevention, and that's what brings change. Before I was assigned to this position, I was working domestic violence. And if anybody here works with domestic violence offenders, they don't change. Like, they have to learn to change their environments, they have to learn to change who they deal with. And I saw probation from a totally different perspective, but to come in to find that there is actually money being set aside to work toward prevention, work towards redirecting people out of this system. It's about us, Penny, coming to the table with information to help direct those funds and those efforts. So I guess I would ask you a question.
Sure.
In your situation, what does prevention look like? What point in what you were dealing with could you have received something that could have changed the direction of your life? How can
First
other
of all,
people
back
here
in the
identify?
1960s, CWS didn't they didn't look at families like mine. I'm Italian, but I look Caucasian. You see what I'm saying? And then my mother was married to a man that had political position. You know what I'm saying? So here we go with that privilege crap. You know what I mean? So why would they come look at my family, CWS? They wouldn't. My stepfather was a city councilman. They're not going to look at me. You know what I mean? Or what's going on behind closed doors, or there's not going to be any problems, or nobody's going to make any calls because it's all intertwined, you see. So that doesn't happen. You know, it's unfortunate. It was a social worker that saved my life, that took my last kids away. That's why I'm sober today. God bless her soul. You know what I'm saying? She set me on the right path, but she should have been there way back in the 1960s. It didn't happen. Over time, things have changed. Prevention to me is getting, and that's why I work with parents today, because getting in there at ground level, giving them what they didn't get. This is generational trauma, and it just goes forward, and we dump it on our kids, and each generation it gets so much heavier. And my children are biracial. They're children of color. So again, crossing those lines. I mean, I set myself up for failure every time you turned around, because I just loved who I loved, wanted to be who I was. and it wasn't acceptable, and I didn't have any support. So I just did it by hard knocks. I say I got the big forehead because that's from bumping it, and that's how I had to learn. But our children shouldn't learn that way. It's been 64 years later, and things are starting to come about. But prevention is getting together. It takes a village, so that village knows the story. That village knows what's going on. These kids need a place. They have a village. Your organization sounds to me like they are that part of that village. And we are improving those entities. You know what I mean? Like Miss Erin said, in her county, they have the mental health for these children. Here, where you are, they don't. Everything should be consistent across the board, and we're doing that now, I guess, by talking to one another. This is making the change, that it needs to be brought about. But let's get in there in high school. Prevention. Let's start educating that generation coming up. Let's start educating, maybe even junior high school, maybe even elementary school. I don't know where the key is, but to let them know that there's somebody here. And we're not going to judge you. You know what I mean? And if things are kind of crappy at home, then you come to us. And also educating them as being parents, so they don't pull that trauma forward, just like the addiction is, you're predisposed for it, right? I had an alcoholic for a mother, Difference between me and a normie is I put that stuff in my system and it goes, give me more. A normie goes, ooh, I'm getting a little too tipsy. I better put that down.
A normie.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
educating about what's in front of you. If your parents have these problems and they battle with alcohol or drugs, the resources, the education, that if you see these signs, if you have a partner, just like we teach domestic violence, if you get a boyfriend and he's controlling and he doesn't let you be with your friends and he's hitting you or he's controlling what you wear, those are red flags. Get out now, run. I've been beat every way. I got married on my honeymoon. He started beating me. You know what I mean? So it's like, you don't know till you know. And that's usually after you've been abused. That's more trauma on trauma. We got to stop that T word. That thing is horrific, and it's blooming in our youth. And it's blooming because they get this from the generation prior.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Penny, for being just so honest and open about your situation and the different things you have to deal with. What we all need to know is we bring all of ourselves to work in one way or another. And I think we have to understand where it's appropriate to actually bring your full self and identify where you've had privilege, identify where you've had disadvantages, bring that to work and allow that to be part of what motivates you to do well. Because I think what we learned from Josiah is that you can be there and just miss it. People were there and the ball was just dropped over and over again.
Yes, it was, and it's unfortunate for him. Then it becomes his responsibility to have to clean up that mess. You know what I mean? Just like my children, the ones that were raised with me during my addiction, it becomes their problem to clean up that mess. It's horrible. And as a parent, now that I'm of sane mind, I can't go back and do that for them. Now it's left to them as their responsibility.
Yeah.
And so what are they going to do with their kids? You know what I mean? It needs to stop somewhere, and
gotta break the trauma cycle.
that's
We
it.
have
Let's
Jeanette
break it.
Shaw.
And education is the key. You know what I mean? Those kids that stood up here and shared their stories, amazing warriors. You know what I mean? Their voices should be heard all over the world. So these kids can hear that you do matter. You can make change. You are resilient. You are allowed to have that life. You know what I mean? You don't have to accept what's been placed on you. Kick that to the side. You take away the good. Let that be the energy beneath your wings and soar, because God don't make no trash. And
There
he
it
made you.
is.
That's your right.
Thank you so much, Penny.
Thank you so much, Penny. That was so very enlightening.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeanette.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thank you, Penny, and your story's impressive, and all the youth that shared too. It takes a lot of bravery to share something that's so personal and so so close to your heart. But I was listening to everyone, thinking that really prevention is about recognition. We with so many of the youth, had we as adults recognized earlier in their life that there was something going on that they needed help with, we might have been able to step in and do something about it, but they were falling through the cracks. And I'm hoping that with the funding we have now, or it lets us use money that previously we couldn't use unless people were put into out-of-home placement. We'll be able to fill those cracks and ask those questions and be brave enough to stand up, to step in and say, hey, can I help? And try to figure out how to help the kids instead of, just going, oh, they're just they're just getting into trouble. They're just doing what kids do. And that's not that's not always the case. Like for a lot of these kids, if someone had stepped in earlier, we may have been able to, change the trajectory of their lives. So I'm hoping that our funding does that for probation and for child welfare.
And Jeanette, that's such a challenge because we want to jump in early, but we don't want to overexpose too early.
Yeah.
So it's a real tight balance to prevention. And so as you all go to discuss your prevention plans within your county tomorrow, it's a real discussion about how do we balance it? Because I don't want to take a young person who hasn't been exposed to the higher levels of probation and court, et cetera, and expose them to that. For example, some young people are afraid the first time they go to juvenile hall. But after they go there and find out, there's a PS4 there, I don't have one at home. There's meals there, I don't have one, it becomes a normal part. And now going to juvenile hall is cool. Some of our young people would tell you, like, going to juvenile hall was nothing for me. So I just wanted to kind of make that a part of the conversation as we talk about prevention. Get in early, but man, it's a balance between how early, how much, and what do we do?
Yeah, well, hopefully because the funding is supposed to stop that first contact with probation or with child welfare. Like, we're supposed to be providing those services so far ahead that they don't even become on a blip on our radar. So they're not exposed to having to come to a child welfare office or a court or to probation officers to the hall. It's just, we get that service to them because the community has recognized that there's a challenge, the schools recognize there's a challenge. And then, you don't have to have social workers or probation officers in your life. Like, my dream is that one day I get to go get unemployment because there's no kid that's being harmed and I don't need a job anymore.
Right.
So like, that's the hope, and before, for years, that money was only if we took a kid in and had to put him into foster care or juvenile hall. And now we can use at least a little bit of it to do something that prevents that, because those outcomes for those kids are challenging at best most of the time when it comes, if we do start removing them from their families and from their communities and things like that. So, but yeah, I agree. There's a balance. Like, you don't want to intervene when you're not need to intervene, but definitely intervene earlier than we have been in the past.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeanette. Go ahead, Aaron.
I just wanted to add to that, there's also a need for patience, even in prevention, because we're all developing these networks of how this is going to work. And that, one, doesn't mean the families trust us. And two, that doesn't mean that that is actually what's right for that family. We don't know their experience. We don't know everything that's going on with them. And so as we develop these networks and these services that they're going to be offered, and to us, this is fantastic, right? We don't want to pull them further in the systems if we don't need to. We want to give them this opportunity. They're not all going to engage, right? For all of those different reasons. And so as we develop the plan, so we have a diversion option that we use. And the first shot at it is we do not touch it. We write a referral to the diversion program and we never contact them. If the kid and the family do not show up, they don't show up, but we still don't pull it back into the system. Most do show up, but about 30% don't, because whatever's going on in their life. If they come back and it's a similar low-level offense, we offer it again, but that might have a phone call saying why this is important, trying to open that door. But it's the same thing. We don't know what service is going to click for them, and if they're even going to trust, because they know that they've been brought into some type of system. Until this really gets out there as being very separate and different from probation and child welfare, there's going to be a lot of distrust. And you also don't know what interventions they've had that were not right for them, that were forced on them, and all of those things. So just putting out there that it's not always going to click at first. And that's not a reflection on that family. That's a reflection. We need to try something a little different.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because in here at this county, we have prevention and early intervention, which is a whole probation unit to divert young people away from the courts. And they do actually meet with the probation officer, but they're not on probation. They don't have probation orders. And it may be something as little as write a victim apology letter, do community service, those types of things. And it's up to our department to use that effectively to, of course, prevent young people from entering into the system. Yeah, I thought I saw another hand, but we're due to be up in 4 minutes. Any of our young people have anything else to add to the discussion or the conversation? Anyone over on Stephanie's side?
There was a
me.
question in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead, Katie.
It'll be super quick.
Yeah, I'm actually also from Santa Clara County, and I'm curious, James, or Stephanie, how do you guys gatekeep, or do you do any prep work when other agencies want to tap in to the YAC? So for example, do you do anything to talk about making sure they don't re-traumatize the youth, or that they know what respectful engagement looks like? And do you ever suffer from fatigue of like too many people wanting to come ask the youth questions or getting focus groups? I feel like I've seen that in some of our other advocacy spaces, that once a good advocacy body is formed, then there's like too many demands on their time.
Well, we gatekeep the and we're the first level, but we typically allow the young people to choose what things they feel led to be engaged in. So they set the agenda. So we bring them the presentation. So they start with us, and then we bring it to the young people, and the young people can make a decision as to whether or not this is something that they want to engage in. Did you have anything to add, Stephanie?
Yeah, no, we do, I don't know if this is kind of answers that question, but we do provide like, when the council does agree to meet with, another system partner or community partner, we do, let them choose, but also prep them and do professional development training so that they feel comfortable in, speaking with these people and things like that. But yeah, I think that.
And we also decide whether they should come to our space, we should go to their space, whether it should be something done virtually. We do try to avoid having teams of people come, 1 or 2 people probably are enough. Sometimes we allow questions to just be emailed to us, and we come together and draft a response and send that response back. Most recently we did that with the County Office of Education around the creation of their wellness centers. They tapped in with us, and our young people had, plethora. They had so many ideas for what should be offered. And I told our young people to not only send those recommendations over, but to keep in mind, they won't be able to have them all, but one of the requests should be that a young person be added to their planning committee so that we can hold them accountable, because we don't want to just give you all these suggestions and then you've never opened the email. So it's a combination of gatekeeping, but allowing the young people to have the autonomy.
Yeah, thank you. So there was just going over the last question that was in the chat. It was, is the YAC model organized in other counties? And yes, it is, to answer that, but it is in Alameda County, but their model is slightly different. The criteria for their youth advisory council is slightly different. It's the same age group, but they are not required to have been through the justice system. They're just community young folks who would like to have a voice in things.
Yeah. And San Mateo has one. There's other departments within the county who have their own as well. But it's time for us to wrap up. So thank you so much for being patient with us and staying with us and, paying attention to our young people and all this positive feedback I've been showing our young people the whole time. So thank you so much. We thank you for this time, and good luck tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.